Welcome to CatzPaw's Workspace, my organized chaos. First off, we want to cover the products we use for safety. When dealing with resin, it can be very hazardous if you touch it, and some people also have issues with the fumes with working with it. So I have a lab coat here that I put on, prescription safety glasses, which if you all wear glasses and don't want to put safety glasses over yours, I highly recommend prescription safety glasses. Got these at Zenny for like 40 bucks. Great extra glasses. Mask for fumes. And of course, nitrile gloves. Nitrile gloves are very, very important. You want to make sure you use those because resin can go through and leach through other types of gloves. They do not leach through the nitrile gloves. So, once you're all in your protective gear, then you're ready to get to work. First, I'm going to show you our printers. This would be our Anycubic Mono X, which is the big boy on the block. You can see that he is sitting inside of an aluminum oven liner. I use these versus silicone because these are cheap, easy to replace, easy to clean up, and I can fold them to fit wherever I need it. You also see blue shop towels. Blue shop towels are also a staple in my office and my workspace. Next up, we have our three smaller printers sitting up here. As you can see, each one is sitting on its own oven liner. That way, if we get drips and spills when taking out the vats, that they drip on the oven liners. I also have blue shop towels in front where I can catch the drips and wipe quickly. Another item that I use here is a cordless screwdriver that has a whisk that's been attached to a drill bit. I use that to mix my resin. One of the things that is key with resin printing is making sure that your resin is mixed thoroughly. Because I have arthritis, shaking is hard to do. So I use this and mix it in the bottles. I'll throw a shake or two in there just for good luck. You also have to have the tools for working with your machines, your respective machines, which would be your hex wrenches. You also need to perform regular maintenance. You need to clean them and lubricate the rails, and I use this stuff here called Super Lube, PTFE lube, to lube the rails on the resin printers as well as the FDM printers. Next up, we have where once a print is done, I bring it over here to this cookie sheet, and I will place the vat in there and use the scraper to scrape off the print. Cookie sheet, once again, easy to clean up, catches all the resin, and available at the Dollar Tree. Most of the items on my workbench are available at the Dollar Tree. Next up is something a lot of folks don't have, which is an orbital shaker. I use this as the first step in my cleaning process for my prints. I use prints and I use IPA, isopropyl alcohol, to clean them. I use these wonderful plastic storage containers, which I have those. I have them in all different sizes. Again, available at the Dollar Tree. The wonderful silicone spatulas. These are great because I can use them in the vats. They're soft. They won't scratch or tear or rip the FEP in the vat. And if you leave resin in the vats like I do, you need to mix it because it will separate. Again, must have well mixed resins to work. I usually run my prints on the orbital shaker for about 60 seconds or 2 minutes. They get all shaken up. That's my first dip in with my dirty resin. And here you can see two of my resin containers, one slightly dirty, one clean. After we do 60 seconds or 2 minutes or more on the orbital shaker, it comes out of the first container, goes into the cleanest resin or the cleanest IPA, and from there it goes down into the sonic cleaner, where we go for another 90 to 180 seconds depending upon what I'm cleaning. I put the plastic container in the ultrasonic cleaner, which has water in it, so that I don't have to worry about blowing myself up. In addition, if I'm printing really small parts, I have these T-strainers and mesh that I put the tiny parts in, and then put those in the plastic container into the IPA bath so that I don't lose my tiny parts. In addition, as you can see in the back here, I've got some really, really dirty resin, or excuse me, dirty isopropyl alcohol. I can let that set and the resin will settle to the bottom, and I can use a coffee filter to strain my IPA and reuse it over several times. It filters out the resin and gives me clean IPA. I would use it for my first bath, not my final bath. I also have several other things that are used over here at the print space. Tweezers, plastic razor blades, because they are safe. Again, if you're doing something, you can actually use this if you have a fail on your FEP or on your plate, and gently scrape things off without slicing a hole in anything. Some brushes of various things, sizes, tweezers. The little sticks, which I put dental wax on the end, which you can purchase from Micro Mart. And this is great because the sticky wax on those will also pick up teeny tiny pieces of cured resin out of your vat. So you can get that clean without rips and tears. Next up, we are going to show you some of the other tools we use. Since we color our resin so that we can print in various colors, we have our pigment set, mixing cups, bottle tops, pipettes, bottles to store the resin in. We also have these wonderful little micro brushes available from Micro Mart. They're great for working with resin. They're also good with working with the slurry that you can make for the filament prints if you're using ABS. And you can see I have a whole bunch of little pimento cheese containers full of all the different types of FDM color filaments that I can dissolve with acetone to get my slurry. Next up, we have over here more tools on the workbench. Various cutters, which are used to remove the supports from the print. Diagonal cutters of all types. Something else I found that works well are toenail clippers, believe it or not, and you can get those in different sizes. They are very sharp and will cut a nice clean print. I have a couple of scalpels here with different blades in it, tweezers, and of course an ultraviolet flashlight in case I need to cure resin after a print or if I'm using it to fill cracks. Super glue, staple, magnifying glass, lit magnifying glass. Because my eyes aren't what they used to be, I rely heavily on this to see what I am doing. Heat gun. I mentioned in the presentation that we use a heat gun to heat our models so that we can easily remove supports. I just picked this one up over at Hobby Lobby. You can also use a blow dryer or anything else that generates heat to warm your prints. When there is a failure, again, we whip out the aluminum cookie sheet here, disposable. I like to use aluminum loaf pans, little tiny ones. I have a paint strainer here, and I purchased this little rack to hold it because when you have a failure with resin, you need to strain your resin. So I would pour the vat of resin into the paint strainer. The good resin will come out, land in the loaf pan, leaving the debris and so forth behind in the paint strainer. I can then use that strained resin that's in there and put it back in the vat once the vat has been cleaned up. In the background you can see, because we do a lot of painting, you can see my various paints. I have Valero, Army Painter, craft paints. All of these are good for painting resin and FDM or filament based prints, along with a selection of various paintbrushes. After I clean my prints, I like to blow them dry before they're cured. You need to make sure that they're dry. To do that, I've just repurposed an old air pump. This poor thing's been around a while. You can see it's being held together with electrical tape, but it does the job. Did a little print nozzle so I can direct the air, and I can dry my prints and get all the alcohol off before we cure. I have a home brew or homemade cure station because I need to cure lots of things, big things, little things, all sorts of things. So I built this, did frame out of wood pieces that I had, then bought some cheap foam core, lined it with aluminum foil, purchased several of the little UV lights, some that I could mount low, some that I could mount high, along with the little individual turntables that will turn once the lights are on. As you can see, some of the background are already turning. This way I can move things around. The first set of lights here can be moved around, and I can cure things large, small, and in between. Once they're in here, I just close the lid and turn it on. One of the things I found invaluable is I picked up this little Ghost Sun, and you can use something else, but it has a nice little app It's controlled on your phone, and you can also use it with Amazon's Alexa, which I just triggered her. And what this allows me to do is I can go in there, and once I turn my UV light on, I can then set a timer for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or however long it needs to run. In the past, I was notorious for forgetting how long my UV light was on, and my prints were under there, and some things would come out over-cured. Once I put this in and set a timer, that problem is gone. I also have my printers hooked up to this so that if I print overnight and it's going to end in the middle of the night, instead of having the printers run all night long, I add like 45 minutes to the print time and have this turn my printers off. Let's see, we also have a good supply of new bottles of resin, along with open bottles of resin, along with IPA or alcohol, and also underneath here you can see I have cookie sheets, which have my extra vats that have covers on them to store the resin in, so I can easily swap out the vats and go to different types of resins and different colors. Alright, next up we'll just do a walk-by of the disastrous electronics bench, which has electronics parts because we do LEDs and stuff like that and light things, and we've got parts and parts and parts and parts and parts and more parts than I know what to do with. Next up over here we have the sanding and drilling workspace, because a lot of times after you do 3D print, whether it's resin, and especially if it's FDM, it's going to require some smoothing or sanding. So this would be our workbench for that. We have various sanding materials, masks. Always wear masks, because whether you're sanding a PLA, an ABS, or a resin print, the dust is bad for you. So wear masks. And safety glasses. We have a good assortment of sandy sticks. We have tack cloths to help remove the dust. We have our cordless Dremel. We have our flexible Dremel. And we have something that is invaluable, which is this nice little flat sander, which is mentioned in our presentation, that we use. Instead of it going round, it goes back and forth and allows you to sand parts flat. We also have some pin drills. This one's electric, so that we can go in and drill tiny holes or increase the size of holes if we need them. And one last thing which we also use for the resin, we can shake our resin over here besides using the whisk to stir. Basically, you strap the resin in there with the clamp, hook the cordless screwdriver up right here, turn it on, and it shakes. It's basically a paint can shaker that I have modified in order to use on the resin bottles. Got this on Amazon. I think that's pretty much it for the garage area. Next, we will move into the office area and where the FDM printers are. Alright, here we are in the office area where you can see we've got the computer set up. And again, a lighted magnifying lamp. I have them everywhere. Every workbench, my desk, everywhere. You need them. Great thing to have. We have regular printers. We have a drafting board, because as we mentioned in the presentation, that we do a lot of 2D mechanical drawings first before we jump in and try and draw them in 3D. I also highly recommend getting a comfortable chair so that you don't hurt your backs. Over here, we have our biggest printer. We've actually had to take down our smaller printers to make room for this guy. This is the large Creality that we show the picture of in the presentation. And for its workspace, it's 17 inches square. And materials that we use on it, since we print in ABS, we use the Kapton tape and place that on the build plate, which gets wiped down with acetone. And we do use the acetone to smooth our ABS prints, as well as make slurry to use as a glue to put ABS prints together and to fill gaps. We also have a nice scraper here to scrape the prints off the build plate. With the new build plates, when they cool down, once it's cool, usually the prints pop right off, but still nice to have something like this to pop underneath it. A good pair of scissors so that we can cut the filament, tweezers, and a nice little wedgie thing here that helps us put the Kapton tape down without getting any air bubbles. However, if you look close, you can see that I do have air bubbles in my tape. In addition, when you're printing with PLA or ABS or any filament, it needs to be protected from humidity and to be dried. Previously, I was putting it in the oven, which can be dangerous, and thanks to my son, for Christmas, he got me this wonderful filament dryer. So I put the filament in there, set the timer to dry the filament before I start a print, and then I let it run at a lower temp while I'm printing so that it stays dry. And let me tell you, my print quality has improved drying my filament this way versus drying it the other way. Need to have a bin for scrap material because no matter what printer you're printing on, especially FDM, you're going to wind up with scrap material. In addition, in our office, when we do buildings and the busts and so forth, we have windows, which we use clear styrene plastic. And to cut that, we went ahead and bought a Cricut Explorer. Folks use this for crafting and scrapbooking. It's great because it has a little knife in there, it runs around, you put your drawing, and it can cut cardboard. We cut the 0.3mm thick styrene plastic for our windows with it. It is an invaluable tool. It was taking me literally hours to cut out the bus windows, where on here it takes about 2 minutes. Pretty much, I think that is the end of the tour. Feel free to email with questions, and we hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.